This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? How do they do that? Well, Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, and planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. So travel smarter and spend less. That's the key with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Armchair Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com. Hey guys, welcome to Armchair Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host. I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys today. It is Black History Month, of course, so I wanted to put out an episode with someone that I think is one of the coolest Black adventurers out there. One of the coolest of any kind of color adventurers out there. He's just a cool guy. Erick Cedeño, aka the Bicycle Nomad. And I think this is a really, really important story. So basically, quick summary, he came across this old photograph in 2013. It was a photograph that was taken way back in 1897, and it showed 20 black soldiers riding bicycles across the American West. And as he dug deeper into it, he learned that these were the Buffalo Soldiers, who you may have heard of. These were the all-black infantry regiment that was formed after the Civil War. And the photo was taken during this grueling 1,900-mile bike journey they did in order to test the efficacy of the bicycle. I know it sounds mad, as a form of military transport, but back then the bicycle had just been invented, and I guess back then it sounded like a good idea. Anyway, as a black man growing up in America, Erick had never seen people that looked like him riding bikes. People of color are still shamefully underrepresented in outdoor and adventure sports. And when he saw this photo, he knew that he had to bring their story back to life. But he did it not by telling that story, but by living it, by pedaling every mile they did, by sleeping where they slept, by eating where they ate, by taking the hard roads where modern paved highways do not go. And in doing so, he invites us to join him on that journey too. So get ready for a powerful, incredible, amazing story as we follow in the treads of the 1897 all-black bicycle corps with Erick Cedeño.
I've always wanted to see the landscape of the country, and in 2010, I came up with this idea. I wonder if I could see the whole country by bike, and I just wanted to see the landscape. I wanted to meet different people. I wanted to wake up in different places, and the way I travel in the past and through work, it was just flying into a city, do my job, and then get back home. And I just felt like I wanted to see what was in that space of the small towns and the small cities in the US that I didn't get to travel. And in 2010, I decided, I'm gonna go from Miami to Key West. It was just an experiment. Just wanted to see if I could go long distance. It was about 150 miles each way, and I did it in 2 days. And on that trip, I decided, I wonder if I could go from border to border. And I didn't know if it was south to north or north to south, but 6 months later, I went up to Vancouver and I rode my bike from Vancouver down to Tijuana along the Pacific Coast Highway, and I just fell in love with the lifestyle and I wanted to see more.
That trip changed his life. It was his first big adventure, 1,400 miles from the Canadian border to Mexico, hugging the coast all the way, the wild, windswept beaches of Oregon, the redwoods of Northern California, the rocky headlands of Big Sur and beyond. And he knew after that riding his bike long distances, seeing the country at that slow pace, seeing the in-between places that people rarely go, was going to be a part of his life from that moment on. But it was also hard. He needed something more than just going from A to B.
On my second trip, I went from Miami to New York City, and I started going through history. starting in Florida and St. Augustine, and I went to Savannah, Georgia, and I went to Charleston and the history in Jamestown, Virginia, and went to DC and Delaware and New Jersey and all the way up to New York. And I was like, wow, I just went through history. And I always say traveling by bike physically and mentally is very hard. So after that trip, I was like, I wonder if I should travel through history. History then became my carrot that allowed me to go, oh, I can't wait till I get to the next town or the next city so I could learn about this, right? And I've always been in love with history. Even as a kid, when I was 12 years old, my mom took me to Mexico and she hired a tour guide, and she took us to the temples and the pyramids of the Mayan and Aztec civilization. And I got to climb pyramids and go through temples of ancient civilization. And I just like, that is who I am still today. And now when I travel by bike, I want to do that. I want to travel through history. I like to learn. I love history. I love traveling by bike. So I now interconnect both of them.
He started doing research. He was looking for what his next ride would be, his next adventure. But now he wouldn't just be traveling to see the places in between, those small towns and communities we fly over unnoticed and race past in our cars. Now, just like that 12-year-old kid lost in the wonder of ancient worlds, he would be traveling through history, revealing those stories, living them one stroke at a time. He started reading, going to libraries, studying, at first just to learn the history of people traveling by bike.
And then I came across this photo of 20 black soldiers traveling by bike, and I never knew about it. And I was like, oh, how come I didn't know about this in middle school or high school or even college? And I just felt cheated. You know, I started traveling by bike when I was 34 years old, and I probably would have started when I was in college if I would have learned about this. They became my inspiration as well to travel, because now I saw people of color, black men traveling by bike, and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know who those guys were, like their names, their personality, what they went through.
These were the Buffalo Soldiers. After the Civil War in 1866, Congress created 4 all-black regiments to fight on the western frontier. The Native Americans they met in battle gave them their nickname. It is said for the way their dark curly hair reminded them of a buffalo's mane, but also because of the ferocity of their fighting. It was considered high praise, and the soldiers wore their moniker with pride. And at the same time as this was happening, the bicycle was surging in popularity. By the mid-1890s, some 300 companies were mass producing over 1 million bikes a year. And it wasn't long before the military got on board.
The Army wanted to try and test the bicycle as a method of transportation and potentially to use it for war. This is 10 years or so before motor vehicle. So back then, all they had were their horses. They knew that the bicycle was cheaper to maintain. Also, if they use it for war or to navigate, it will be more quiet than a horse. So they just thought, why don't we test it out?
And the people to test it out, it was decided, were the Buffalo Soldiers, specifically the 25th Infantry Regiment. Lieutenant James Moss was put in charge. He had graduated from West Point in 1884, last in his class. And because of that, he got sent west of the Mississippi, where the rest of his upperclassmen did not want to go. He began working with the 25th Infantry, and he was fascinated with the bicycle. This was his opportunity. He put himself and the 25th forward to test the feasibility of the bicycle as a form of military transport. He got the green light, and the all-black 25th Infantry Bicycle Corps was born.
They did 3 expeditions. So the first expedition was from Fort Missoula, where they were stationed, to McDonald Lake. It's about 130 miles round trip. That was the first expedition, the first test. The second expedition was from Fort Missoula to Yellowstone. That is about 600 miles, but it was reported that they rode 200 miles within Yellowstone. So the total navigation was about 800 miles. The Army says, well, we should try longer. And so Lieutenant Moss decided to go from Fort Missoula to St. Louis, Missouri, 1,900 miles, and it took them 41 days, and they only had 2 days off. Really, really hard to navigate today. And in 1897, it was harder because they didn't have a lot of water, food. It was really hard to navigate through those muddy roads. Those bikes, they didn't have gear, so they were single speed. Also, their wheels were wooden wheels. It wasn't paved back then like we have them today. And it was not just a bike expedition, but it was also, they had to do drills throughout the day. And they would have to let go of the rifle and the handlebar and act like they were shooting at some of these muddy and gravel roads. And it was just a tough expedition. And it's the reason why I tell this story, because to me, those are my heroes. Those guys paved the way for me to be able to travel through this country free, and what they had to deal with racism and mentally, that was a tough ride for them, and they're almost superhuman to me.
And the more he read about them, the more he knew what he had to do. This would be his biggest, most audacious, and most important adventure to date. Not just traveling through history, but bringing it back to life, bringing this incredible piece of American and especially African American history into the light. He would retrace the Buffalo Soldiers expedition, traveling by bike from Fort Missoula, Montana, through Wyoming and Nebraska to St. Louis, Missouri. Erick studied their lives for 7 years before he began, reading journals, newspaper articles from the time, anything he could get his hands on. So by the time he arrived at Fort Missoula for the start of his adventure, they weren't just his heroes. They were also somehow like friends, like brothers.
I knew where those guys were born. I know where they died. I know where each of them is buried. I know if they were married. I know if they had kids. So when I started finally getting into Fort Missoula, I got emotional. I actually shared some tears just before I left, because I love these guys very much. I love what they did, and they're resilient, right? So to finally be in the trail of the Bicycle Corps, yeah, that was emotional for me. I called out, I shut everything down mentally, and I called out the names of those previous explorers, right? So I called the name of Private John Finley, who was the mechanic of the expedition, First Sergeant Mingo Sanders, and Elwood Foreman, and I called the names of all the guys, and I just said, protect me. You guys know this route, protect me on this route, but also share the history that I don't know through some of these books that have been written. You guys know what you guys went through, and please share that with me. And that's exactly what I did on the beginning of this expedition. And you know, I always say the soul never dies. So those guys were present, and I could feel their presence.
He began pedaling at 5:30 a.m. on June 14th, 2022, exactly 125 years to the minute from when the Bicycle Corps set out on their own grand, groundbreaking adventure. But there would be no gentle warming in.
So today, you're able to do it two ways to get up over the Continental Divide. You're able to go through the road where all the cars will go, and there's a big shoulder that you're able to navigate through that. But they didn't go that way. They went through a pass that was muddy, rocky, and I wanted to go there. For me, it's very important to go as close to the history and as close to the historical route as I could. I want to see weather pattern. I want to see road condition, but I also want to feel what they felt. So if I go through the paved road, it would be physical hard because you still have to climb, but they didn't go that way. So I took the gravel route up. And I remember stopping that one time halfway up, and I just couldn't believe how hard it was for them to go up. You get to the top and it's just so beautiful. Montana is one of the most beautiful states we have. And yeah, all you see is the landscape. But going down was as hard as going up because it was steeped going down and rocky. And constantly I was pressing my brakes. And again, I pulled over and I just like, how did these guys do it? The first 2 days on that 1897 expedition, it snowed. And June 24th of 1897, it snowed. And so they had to ride in the snow. And just imagine that, the weather, the mud, every 7 miles, they had to pull over as a group and just get the mud off the tires because they couldn't navigate forward. I mean, yeah.
Erick estimates that he spent about 70% of the trip off-road in the gravel and mud, just like the Buffalo Soldiers did. The other 30% was on paved road, but only because there was no other option. He was determined to get as close as he could to the true historical route. He'd learned the history in books back to front. Now he was determined to learn it with his own eyes, under his own steam, pedal by pedal, mile by mile.
Right after I went over the Continental Divide, I got one of my highlights. I got to spend the night at Fort Harrison, exactly where they went, and they spent the night. Because when they crossed over, it was rainy, it was snowy, so it was really wet. All their tents were wet, so they decided to stay that night and the next day to dry their stuff. I went there because there's a historical museum. And when I went there, I wanted to see if they have photos that I've never seen or anything about their expedition when they went through it. But there was nothing, so I went really fast through the museum and I was heading out. And this lady was outside and she was like, I saw you coming in and I just saw you this morning on the news. And I just want to thank you for paying respect to those guys. And she said, what can I do for you? And I'm like, I love to stay here. They stayed here. I've been calling for 8 months and no one gave me the clearance to stay because I'm not military. She said, well, I am the only person that could do that clearance. She said, I'm the colonel of this fort. I just looked at her and almost tears. Something told me, go there, because I was gonna leave. I wasn't gonna go there because no one gave me the clearance. So I was heading up to my campsite and I met this lady and says, yeah, you're able to stay here. And I'm always calling, and not just at the start, but also when I'm riding my bike, I'm calling the names of some of those guys. I was like, tell me what happened here. Let me experience. And this happens, right? And just like this, many experiences happen on this trip that I'm like, how did that happen? And I know how that happened. Those guys were with me and they allowed me to experience what they experienced. And I was able to stay in Fort Harrison exactly where they stayed. And for me, that was amazing.
As the Buffalo Soldiers left Montana, crossing the Little Bighorn River into Wyoming, newspaper reports preceded them, and people began to catch wind of what they were doing, welcoming them into their small towns and communities with open arms. But the riding was still incredibly hard. The thick mud broke their bikes. They were forced to ride at night when it was hard packed. They got lost, they got hungry. And now, 15 days into his adventure, as he reached Gillette, Wyoming, Erick was also beginning to feel the toil.
I was tired of the expedition physically, mentally, because I'm doing research, I'm getting lost, I'm going backtracking. So I just like, June 29, I need to take this day off. And the night before, I was asked to speak at a historical museum. So I didn't have the energy to continue the next day. So June 29th, I took the day off. Somewhere around 1:00 p.m. on June 29 of 2022, it started hailing, and big hailing. And I was like, wow, if I would have left Gillette there was nowhere to protect myself. I would have been in the open road, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm glad that I took the day off. And I get a text from the historian of that museum, and he says, did you see what's happening outside? I was like, yeah, the hell. He said, I got to share something with you. And he texted a newspaper article written in June 29th of 1897 when the troop was coming through Gillette, Wyoming. And it says on the article that on June 29, they were hit by hailstorm, 7-8 inches of hailstorm. And the guy says, someone is watching over you, that you decided to take the day off and you didn't have to go through that experience that they went through.
There were good times and more coincidences. The Bicycle Corps arrived in Crawford, Wyoming on the 4th of July and were invited to walk in the parade, cheered by crowds of people. Erick arrived the same day and biked in the same parade. But if the Continental Divide and shelterless plains of Wyoming were physically grueling, what was coming next for the Buffalo Soldiers and for Erick was another level. The Nebraska Sandhills are the largest sand dune formations in the Western Hemisphere, stretching 265 miles across the state and covering 19,300 square miles of wide open, desolate land.
The Nebraska we have today in 2023 is not like the Nebraska that they crossed in 1897. There weren't that many towns, so they weren't able to go into places to get water. So sometimes they had to get water from cattle ranchers, and a lot of those guys will get sick. And the heat that they went through, it was reported that it was 110 degrees when they went through Nebraska. For me, it was about 106. That was the hottest that it got. But I was not in full uniform. I had shorts and I had a t-shirt, and I was able to take my t-shirt off, which they didn't. They were servicemen, so they stayed with their long pants and uniform on, and also the rifle. So one of the things that I had to do, and it happened kind of by the kindness of someone, that I walked into a convenience store, and it was 106 degrees. The guy was like, why are you out there biking? Like, there's a warning that no one should be out there. Like, you should be home. And it's like, and I show him pictures of my project and why I'm doing it. He was like, man, well, why don't you go into the beer cooler and cool off? And I was like, oh, thank you. Because at that point, I could feel how hot I was. So I went in there, had some chips, had some water, and I just sat in that beer cooler for like 15 minutes. And every time I stopped at a convenience store, I would just ask, can I go into your beer cooler?
They made it through, and so did Erick. But if it wasn't for that history, for his determination to honor their determination and tell their story, he says he might not have. It would have been easy to quit. For Erick, the going gradually got easier. But for the 25th Bicycle Corps, as they crossed into Missouri and the final leg of their trip, something else began to rear its ugly head.
As they went east of Wyoming into their trip in Nebraska and Missouri, especially in Missouri, they had a lot of racism. As a matter of fact, some of the locals would get them lost on purpose, you know. They're like, oh yeah, you go this way, and that's just for them to get lost. So they experienced a lot of racism. That was hard to learn when I read that, because as physically and mentally this expedition is, and now they have to go through that, it's hard, right? Like, they couldn't go into places that the lieutenant and the doctor and the journalist were able to go. So while they were having a good meal at some of the restaurants, those guys were outside in the heat having a can of beans. Yeah, that's hard to know that history and what they had to go through.
And that perhaps is the most important part of this story. As a segregated unit, the Buffalo Soldiers, despite winning numerous commendations and often giving up their lives for their country, were subjected to the same systemic racism they faced outside of the army. They served an America that did not serve them. There are different reasons why their story is still largely unknown, but in many ways it can be seen as a testament to the struggle they faced then, and in reflection, the struggle African Americans still face in this country today. But when they finally reached the end, after 41 days and 1,900 grueling miles, the Buffalo Soldiers got the hero's welcome they deserved.
And when they got into St. Louis, there's some reports that thousands and thousands of people, I read a report that over 10,000 people greeted them in St. Louis. And I was very happy for them that they were treated like heroes. The newspaper article from July 14, 1897, when they arrived to St. Louis, it says that this was the greatest achievement by a cyclist, by bicycle, ever done, right? And till this day, I feel that that was the greatest achievement ever done by bicycle. And for thousands and thousands of people to greet them, and a few hundred people rode the last final miles with them. That was pretty awesome.
Erick finished on the exact same date they had, July 24th, almost to the hour. He had traced their path precisely. He had seen what they had seen, felt what they had felt. He had called to them as he rode, and they had listened. And their story is just as relevant, just as important today as it was 125 years ago.
When I get to campsites, or I get to a campground, or I even look at social media or magazines of people that travel by bike, you don't see a lot of people of color. And for me, it's not about me. I've done a lot of expeditions. For me, it was about telling their story, for this story to inspire the next generation of people that want to travel by bike, the next explorers, the next historians that are of color, to have the sense of pride that I had when I first saw the first photo, when I started reading about their experience, and to know that there were people of color traveling by bike and it wasn't documented before. And I'm glad that the Army did this, because finally I was able to see photos, journals of people that look like me, that travel by bike like me. And again, for me, it's about inspiring the next generation of explorers that look like me, or maybe that don't look like me. But I do want to inspire the next generation of explorers and historians. And that's why I told this story.
People of color have been shamefully underrepresented in outdoor and adventure activities, and historic discrimination is at the heart of the problem. In retracing this route and raising the story of the Buffalo Soldiers into the light, Erick is helping to redress that balance. He's helping to show young Black boys and girls across the country that people that look like them can be explorers, can be adventurers, can, like the Buffalo Soldiers themselves, achieve incredible feats, irrespective of their situation. But riding bikes, taking off on extraordinary journeys, is about more than just that for Erick.
That experience of traveling slow, I fell in love with. So I actually thought it was about the physical, and it was. I saw beautiful places in the country, but I got to go internal too, and I got to travel inside of myself, discover who I was. It became a moving meditation for me. I don't do this full time. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I have work to do. I have to pay rent. I have to, I'm a responsible adult, right? So when I go on these expeditions, the first week is that chatter in my head of like, oh, I left my wife. I hope she's okay. My son, did I pay the rent? Oh, I need to deposit this. So all that things are going into my head. But at some time, usually within 5 or 6 days, I'm just in the present moment, and it's just the strokes, the bike pedaling.
And that's important for all of us. We don't have to ride 2,000 miles. We just need to keep the wheels turning. And for Erick, this trip changed his life. In calling those names, in living their history, he found his own story too. His trip was covered and celebrated by everyone from the New York Times to the Smithsonian. It spread like wildfire around the world. He now gives talks across the country. He has a platform. People listen, and he has more history to share, more miles to ride. Erick's story, in its own way, is no less inspiring than those heroes he saw in a dusty old photo those many years ago.
Meet up with people that support your ideas, that support your dreams, and stick with those people, you know? And if you have a dream of exploring, there's always a way to do it. I've always been curious. And as much support that I had, there was also family members, friends that discouraged me to explore. They were like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you traveling by bike? You have a college degree. You should be in an office. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just following myself. How I describe it is curiosity is the way that I get fed, or my soul gets fed. You know how we eat and we need food to nourish? Curiosity nourished myself and nourished my soul. And it has all my life, even as a kid. I mean, just telling you that is bringing tears to my eyes because it's how I get fed.
Thank you, Erick. Thank you for taking us on this amazing journey across America and through history, bringing the story of the Buffalo Soldiers back so it won't ever be lost again. Connect with him directly at iambicyclenomad.com. Bicycle_nomad is his Instagram, and Bicycle Nomad, all one word, is the Facebook. He's an awesome guy, as you can tell, and great fun to hang out with, so do go and check that out. You won't be disappointed. And if you like this episode, check out some more of our bike adventures. The Silk Road Mountain Race, riding the toughest mountain bike race in the world with extreme bike packer Kat Jaffe, is one of my favorites. And Signs of Life, a 53,000-mile bike ride around the world with Stephen Fabes, is another. But we have lots, so just scroll through some of the catalog and see what you can find. And let me know what you like to and what other bike adventures you want to hear about. The website is armchair-explorer.com, and the Instagram and Facebook is at Armchair Explorer Podcast. And don't forget to check out aptpodcaststudios.com to find more of their awesome shows. So excited to be part of that team. So until next time, keep pedaling, keep calling, and keep being curious, because the more we look for wonder in the world, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who we are. Dare to be truly alive. This podcast was produced by Armchair Productions, the audio experts for the travel industry. Armchair Explorer is a part of APT Podcast Studios. Jenny Allison wrote and co-produced the show along with me, and Charles Tyree did the audio editing and sound design. I'm Aaron Miller. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
Quick question. Do you want travel tips from people who have actually been there?
Our show is co-hosted by Tim Johnson, an award-winning travel journalist who's been to more than 145 countries around the world. And I'm David Brody, the other co-host who's been travel podcasting for 20 years while traveling to 50-plus countries around the world.
In about 10 or 20 minutes per show, we break down a destination with the kind of insight you usually only get from long guidebooks or hours of research.
So if you want expert advice, zero fluff, and travel inspiration that you can actually use, search for Travel in 10 wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also find us at boyescape.com.
Hi, I'm Pauline Fromer, host of the Fromer's Travel Podcast. We post new episodes weekly, detailing the kinds of money-saving tips and cultural insights that will make your trips richer without making you significantly poorer. We do so by interviewing real travel experts like TV host Samantha Brown, Fromer's authors from around the globe, and such public figures as Free Solo's Alex Honnold. It's a fun travel party. I hope you can join us.